as of right now. So equations of hyperbolas, this is going to be day 2 assignment. Again, any questions, put in the chat. You guys can always message me on Remind, always the best way to get a hold of me quickly. And if you haven't turned in notes, you're waiting for me to open your test, you need to get your notes turned in to me. So hyperbolas, there's 2 different lessons for hyperbolas. So everything we're doing right now when we talk about these hyperbolas is always going to be centered here at the origin. And the next lesson that we're going to be going into is where it's going to be not at the origin, but the concept's the same. So a little bit of a review from what we did on the instruction. Just like our parabolas always have a vertices. So these are our vertices. The 2 parabolas together make a hyperbola. This axis from vertex to vertex, when we talked about an ellipse, we called it the major axis. In this case, it's called our transverse. And it's still just a value of 2a. The distance from my vertex to the center there is an a value. My co-vertices, the distance from my center to my co-vertices are always going to be my b value, just like when we talked about with the ellipsis. So this one says, which of these are true? Check all that apply. I like it on the quizzes when they say like check 3, then we know how many. So we've kind of got to go through them all though. First question says the center is located at 0, 0. And we can see here that my center is at 0, 0. Then it says there is a vertex at -6, 0. So if I was at -6, 0, I would be this point right here. So that is also true. Then it says the transverse axis on the graph is vertical. And we already talked about this is our transverse axis from vertex to vertex, and that's going to be a horizontal line. So this is not true. It's horizontal. The foci are located within the rectangular reference box. So to talk about this reference box, this is how we get our asymptotes. Our asymptotes would go from corner to corner, and that would give me my asymptotes. But it's not contained in my foci. Remember, just like our parabolas, our foci are always inside these parabolas. The hyperbolas are always contained within the hyperbola. So our foci would have to be somewhere inside here. I didn't figure it out exactly, but our foci is going to be somewhere inside the parabolas, not within the box. So that's not true. The directrices are vertical lines. So similar to our ellipses where the directrices were perpendicular to the major axis, they have to be perpendicular to our transverse axis. So they would be somewhere like this. So these would be vertical lines, which is true then. So I really like just kind of taking these piece by piece and kind of looking at what I have when I find these or when I'm given these questions. The next question you guys are going to have is, a hyperbola has a center at the origin and the vertex at 9, 0. So I like to draw graphs to kind of give me like a feel of what am I looking at. So I know I have my center here, and at 9, 0, I have a vertex. Just from looking at this, I know because my vertex is here, my center is here, I know that my graph's going to open this direction. Actually, I do know that. But another piece that I could always use is that my foci here was going to be at 41, 0. That my graph would have to have that on the inside. So there's another way to also confirm. They're always going to open away from the center. They're always going to open away from the center. So it says then, what is an equation for this hyperbola? The distance from my center to my vertex is going to be a value of a. The distance from my center to my foci is always the value of c. So I know my a and my c. I know a is going to equal 9. I know c is going to equal 41. Those are the 2 things I know. The other thing that I need to figure out is it going to be an x squared first or a y squared? And the way that I can easily tell is which way is this facing? So is this opening, are they opening along my x-axis, or they open up and down, which is going with the direction of my y-axis? So whatever direction my parabola is, in this case it's going left, they'll go left and right. That's going to go along that x-axis. X-axis goes left to right. So that means that the x value has to be first. So it can't be this one or this one. That X value has to be first versus the Y because it's opening left and right. We'll have a parabola, an ellipse over here, sorry, parabola over here as well. So they're left and right, X-axis is left and right. So the values that I need to figure out is what is my A squared and what is that B squared. Those are the two things that we need to figure out, is which one of these is it going to be. So how do I figure that out? Well, I need to know what B is. And the things that I do know is that C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. Now remember, hyperbolas have the minus in between, so then it's a plus here. They're always the opposite. When it was in an ellipse, it was a positive here and a negative here. So I know C is 41 squared is equal to 9 squared plus B squared. 1,681 is equal to 81 plus B squared. This tells me that B squared is going to equal 1,600. So my value of B has to be 40. But remember, this is actually, oh, they wrote it out as, so sometimes I write this out as your 40 squared. Sometimes it might just be the value of 1,600. They kind of switch it up here. So in this case, I'm going to have my B, 1,600 is my 40 squared. So this is going to be the correct value, not the 41. Questions. Let me know if I go too fast too. All right. My next one says that I have my vertex is at the origin. So again, my hyperbola is centered at the origin. Vertex is at 3, 0. So if I'm at 3, 0, I'm going to be right here. And the focus of the hyperbola is located at 9, 0. So 9, 0. Here's my focus. So again, my parabola is going to be opening to the left here. I would also then have one at -3 opening. It's going to open left. This one's going to open right. So they're opening left and right, left and right. Since it's left and right, I know it would be an X squared equation first. In this case, though, it says, what is the equation the directrices? Since it's going to be an X equation, I know my directrices are going to be X values. Now remember, from here to here, that's my transverse axis, and my directrices have to go through it. They have to be perpendicular. So it means it's going to go through that X axis. So it has to be an X equals equation. It's X equals plus or minus. And when we talk about directrices, the equation is going to be always A squared all over C. Kind of at the bottom of my paper here. Let me see if I can stretch that out a little bit. So what is my A and my C? Well, the distance from my center to my vertex is A. The distance from my center to my foci is always my C value. So I pretty much have everything I need. I know that A is 3, so it's 3 squared. And I know that my C is 9. It's going to end up being 9 over 9, which is just the value of 1. So my directrices are going to be X equals plus or minus 1. So there would be 1 here, and there would also be 1 here, -1, and at +1 there. So it was nice because this already had the options. Sometimes directrices are, if it's going to be going through your y-axis, it would be a y equals equation. So they could be an x equals or y equals. So be careful about that. I have 2 more examples for you guys. So here, again, the center of my hyperbola is located at the origin. So we're going to be here at, my center is here at 0, 0. One focus is at 0, 5. So I have a focus here at 0, 5. And its associated directrix is represented by the line y equals 9/5. Y equals 9/5. So I have a directrix at y equals 9/5. So that's going to be slightly under a value of 2. So it's going to be, let's say if I say that this is 2, my directrix would be somewhere right here. Well, I know that my focus has to be inside one of the parabolas from the hyperbola. So it's going to open something like this. And then I would also have one that's going to go down like this. Since they are going to open up and down, I know it's going to be a y equals first. This is a misprint right here. This is a misprint. This should be a minus right there. Should be a minus. We're talking about hyperbolas. It's a minus. That is a misprint that they gave you guys. It is not an ellipse. So they do make mistakes in the Edgenuity stuff. Just be aware that that is an error right there. It is not supposed to be a plus. Okay, so how do I figure out though what my A and B are? So here are the things that I know. I know that my directrix, we just saw this on that previous problem, is going to be A squared all over my C value. So I know A squared is equal to 9, then that tells me that A has to be a value of 3. The other thing that I know is that my C is 5. I know from right here that my C value is 5. I also know because from the distance from my focus to my center is also my C value, which is a distance of 5. So I could find that C value from looking at either one of these. It's the same C value. So I also know then that C is equal to 5. But I need to figure out B, and just like one of our previous problems, we used the idea that C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. So 5 squared is equal to 3 squared plus my B squared. I have 25 is equal to 9 plus B squared. This tells me that B squared is equal to 16. So my B value must be a value of 4. Must be a value of 4 there. And then my last problem is a check all that apply again. So again, even before I look at what these are kind of asking, I like to just kind of label things like what's what. So I know, again, here's my center. These have to be my vertices. This is going to be my co-vertices. The distance from my center to a vertice, that is my A value. So that distance in this case is 8. So I know A is going to be 8. I know the distance from my co-vertice to the center is my B value. So in this case, that distance is a value of 12. Some of you guys go, why not negative 12? Because this is going to the negative 12. When we talk about distance, we only talk about the positive numbers. We're measuring the length of something. It doesn't matter which direction you're moving. We measure the length of something. It's always a positive number. So let's see, what do we have here? It says there is a focus at negative 15, 0. Well, in order to figure out that focus, we need to know what is our C value. So if I want to calculate C, I need to know C in order to figure out my focus. And I know C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. So C squared, we said A is 8. We said B is 12. So C squared is going to be 81 plus 144. C squared is going to be 81 plus 144 is 225. So C is going to equal 15. I'm like, oh, sweet. Oh, can't see all that. So I have my C value is 15. So this could be a foci then because it has that value 15 is what I think right away. So then I go, okay, well, if I was going to graph my foci, it has to be inside my parabola. And if I'm here at 12, they're counting by 2, so 14. So 15 would be like right here would be a foci, and right here would be a foci. So if I look at these points, this point right here is going to be 0, negative 15. This point here is going to be 0, positive 15. This is not correct. They try to trick you. So yeah, they have the right numbers, but they're switched because this is saying I would be on my x-axis over here. This is saying a point over here. That's not correct. It has to be inside the parabola. So this one is wrong. This one is going to be correct at 0, 15. That's a good one. We want to keep that one. My next one says that I have an asymptote at 3/4 x. So remember for my asymptote, we go from corner to corner here, this creates an asymptote, and it's always going to be a positive and a negative of it. Here's my negative of it, corner to corner. And the easiest way for me to look at the asymptote is just to look at my rise over run. How far do I go up? So I count up, I go up 8. So equation of a line is going to be y equals, my slope is going to be 8 over 12. I go up 8 and it's over 12. So it's 8 over 12 x. This is my slope, right? It's at my origin, so it's just plus the value of 0 there for the b. We don't need that. 8/12 though can be simplified. So that's the same thing as y equals, 4 goes into both of them. So y equals 2/3 x. 2/3 x. Did I do that right? I'm like, I had that marked. That's not correct. Oh, that's why I'm off. I said this was 8, which throws everything off. 9 squared is 81. This is at 9. Sorry, I just looked and saw the 8. This is at a value of 9. 9. Do you guys see that? This is at 0, 9. 9. I just saw the 8, saw it as 8. I did the math here right as I was finishing out. I wrote it as 8. It's 9, which makes this 9. So 9/12 simplifies to 3/4. 3/4. 3/4. It is a positive 3/4. This would be a negative 3/4. So this line is y equals 3/4 x. This line right here would be y equals negative 3/4 x. So two different equations. So the first one here, this is correct. This one is wrong. This says x is equal to. That's not how you would write. Remember, when we graph our lines, it always needs to be a y equal. So if I had x is equal to 3/4 y, I would have to solve for that y value. So I would multiply by the reciprocal. I would multiply by 4/3 to each side. So this would cancel out, and that would leave me with y is equal to 4/3 x. This would be my equation that I would look at. And this is not the same thing. These are not the same thing. So this is a no. My next one is my directrix. So these are talking about the directrix. We've seen this now a couple times. We talked about that directrix. In this case, my directrix, it's going to go through my perpendicular to my transverse. Remember, it's always perpendicular to the transverse. So it's going to go through my y-axis. So I know from my directrix, it's going to be a y equals equation, and it's going to be y equals plus or minus. And again, it's always a squared over c. So the same thing, same a squared over c. This part changes. Sometimes it's x, sometimes it's y, depending on which axis you're going through. So look at your graph and see which one are you going to cross. We're crossing your y, so this is a y equals. So if I fill in my values, it's y equals plus or minus a squared. A, we said, is 9, not 8. A squared all over my c is 15. So y is equal to, this is going to be 80 plus or minus 81 over 15. 3 goes into both of those. So I could simplify that to a plus or minus 3 goes into 81 27 times. 3 goes into 15 5 times. And so I have a directrix at y equals positive 27/5, and at y equals negative 27/5. So this is going to be true. This one is not true. So the 2 are here. This is not an option. That is not correct. That's the rest of it. That's all I have today. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over problems directly from the quiz. They're all very similar to this. So formulas, again, focus on your directrix. This is a common one. And your c squared equals a squared plus b squared. These are the two main formulas you go back to solve for stuff. Otherwise, A, B, and knowing C is to get to your focus. If you have any other questions, please make sure to reach out. Before I let you go, do you have anything you want to ask? All right, well then you have a great day. I will see you later. Take care. Bye.